So in this video, we're going to break down the brand new patch notes for F1 24, bringing in the handling change along with a bunch of other features. In the second half of the video, I'll do gameplay, basically doing my first laps on F1 24 with the new handling model, giving my thoughts and opinions throughout the entire process. It's going to be a raw reaction, pretty much me doing laps on different tracks with different cars and finding out if it feels any different, comparing default versus custom setup, and finding the balance and where the limit is. Now, we're going to start off with patch notes. So guys, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts down below if you have played it already, and let's get into it. So let's talk about those specific handling adjustments, skimming over some secondary tweaks. So, fixed tire model response to rapidly changing slip angle and ratio. Adjusted slip curves for post-peak fall-off, load sensitivity and camber effects to work with the slip response fix. We then go to tire thermal model adjustments for high temperature behavior, and then we have improved power unit balance in 7th and 8th gear, and then gear ratios matched to the 2024 race data, and then revised suspension kinematics to reflect 2024 car designs. Now, the other ones are secondary. In terms of these fixes, I think the first two kind of relate to generally the sharpness of the turning you're getting and that kind of, side to side, lock to lock kind of vibe. They're trying to cut this out. We'll see if that has any effect when we hop on the game in just a little bit. The tire thermal model adjustments is interesting. I've been struggling quite a bit with tire overheating, so essentially they're basically scaling it a little bit so it's a bit more manageable. And then of course, improved power unit balance in 7th and 8th gear, which is interesting. I've noticed you don't really have enough oomph to kind of use 8th gear a lot of the time. Silverstone is a good example. You keep it in 7th gear through turn 1, turn 2, into the S's, through cops. You don't actually go into 8th. There's like a lack of power, so I'm keen to try that. And then we also have gear ratios matched to 2024 race data, so there might be some different gears for certain corners. And then also revised kinematics for the car designs, so that might change the way the car reacts to curbs and certain bumps in the road when you go over them. So again, we'll test that as well and see how that feels. And then a few extras, we have ABS, traction control and gamepad controls tuned to suit the new tyre model. We also have a performance of several teams, basically updated to 2024, including Monaco, which is the most latest round. So we'll have a performance patch basically, so career mode will be changed. And then ERS bug fix for MG UK Talk, and new calibration of hot lap mode energy use at all tracks. Now that's something we'll test in GP mode. So Lee Mather, you know who he is by now, Senior Creative Director, goes on to say the changes that they've put out are set to calm down the front end of the car and giving a more realistic level of grip and turning capability. Also, adjustments will aid in the controllability of the car on throttle. These changes will be more prevalent for players using a wheel without assists. So we'll see if that's the case. Now, this paragraph is quite interesting. They basically note how the AI are having the new handling applied to them as well, and they're now more prone to making mistakes, which is something they haven't really done so far, and that could lead to safety cars and other things kind of happening. So general leaderboards have been wiped, trophy cabinet now works, and then achievement fixed. ERS will no longer drain after the per lap usage limit has been reached. Now, that's interesting. I can't fully figure out based off the wording what that might mean. So I understand it as maybe the same way you'd run out of deployment in previous games. When you do a hot lap, you have to kind of manage it sometimes. That's what I understand has been basically put back into the game. So you have a limit of how much you can use or abuse the overtake. And then just some minor F1 world stuff. Anyway, that's not important. Career, AI now more likely to have component failures and failures during the race. Fixed two-player career from sometimes skipping or getting stuck during contract negotiations. Fixed an instance in two-player career where both players restarting their game could cause a desync. Fixed a rare instance in two-player career which could result in the wrong name driver being added. After return from a race on the first lap, the player's pace stat will no longer increase. Fixed the rare issue where specialists could incorrectly become unavailable in driver career. Would have never known if that was happening incorrectly or correctly, or not, to be fair. Now, to be fair, graphics, visuals, nothing really major besides, I guess, in terms of what's going to affect your experience playing the game is going to be when a dynamic objective is given, the MFD will now automatically open to the relevant page if available. And then also a bit further down, visual improvements to some F1 24 and F2 vehicles, also replay camera improvements at several tracks. Audio issues, I've not really had any experience with these. I've had one where in the replays after the race you get radio messages, which is weird, but none of the above. Handling, other, so a different kind of category, and quite interestingly, the marginal increase in speed when partially driving on the grass has been eradicated, which is something that came out last week where people were driving half off the pit straight in Bahrain and were going quicker on the straight. So yeah, a fix has been made to prevent extreme overheating of the tyres in certain conditions. So again, that might tie into that previous point about the tyres overheating. And then in terms of miscellaneous, the one that's really kind of worth noting is support added for Acertec Invicta direct drive wheelbase if you have that. There's one more thing I want to show you, and something that isn't as known, but you basically have the EA F1 24 forum. Now, in here you're going to have different issues being worked on. So you've got 4 categories: investigating, awaiting patch, resolved, and closed. Now, what usually happens, investigating is, as it says there, they're currently looking into something. Awaiting patch is basically it's been fixed. They're waiting for basically the green light approval to basically publish the patch or the update. So those issues have been sorted. And then resolved are basically past fixes already done. So starting off with investigating, we have game crashing on boot due to graphics issue, game occasionally soft locking at the beginning of a race session, game occasionally crashing after completing FP3 in my team, and now we get to the interesting one and being investigated right now. Excessively long AI ERS trains, excessively long AI DRS trains, which basically is aiming to fix these kind of packs that AI run in qualifying and the race, and basically kind of generate this really weird, boring, unpredictable racing. PS5 players potentially getting a customization item removed error after applying a sponsor logo in their My Team livery. PC players experiencing game crashes if the game is not added as bit defender exception. There's workarounds to kind of get around that if you have that issue. Unable to open radio comms on Xbox, which is pretty annoying. Customization to on-screen display aren't being saved. I've had this. I've changed my OSD and it's not working. Unusual collisions during some multiplayer races. Invisible bump at turn 13 Spain. I had this yesterday in career mode a couple of times on the last lap of the race as well. So hopefully this gets fixed. It's not another situation where last year where they messed up the pit entry at Spain twice. So hopefully it doesn't happen. Replay audio doesn't always match on-screen visuals. Thank you. Another problem. The replays are broken. They've done this new system this year where they're basically using real life engine sound rather than the in-game audio, and yeah, that was a big issue, and it really is off-putting, especially if you're watching league racing. My team unable to proceed after 1.5 seasons for a game mode that they haven't touched at all. How's that happened? Thrustmaster TX wheel not being recognized. Again, this is why I got a Thrustmaster, because Thrustmaster Codemasters don't really go together. F1 theme song being copyright claimed on YouTube. That's a big one. I haven't had the issue yet, but that shouldn't be a thing, so hopefully that gets resolved. Logitech G923 force feedback not working correctly unless turning off and on your Xbox. And then the Haas and Ferrari using the same color on the timing board and minimap. Thank you. The amount of comments I've had about why is the Haas in red, that's going to get fixed. So these are now fixed and are basically awaiting a patch. Now, what they might do is basically, these are ready to go, but they'll wait to get a few more of these done to basically pair them up and send out a bigger patch. So for this one, we have unable to use ERS in certain circumstances, wet weather tire compounds unavailable or incorrect in certain conditions. Now, I don't know if that links to the AI using dries in the wet, but we'll see what exactly that applies to, but maybe that is it. Focus stat rolling back to 99 incorrectly, as we saw in Arava's Can I Get Fired video. The pace stat increasing incorrectly, which we also saw in that video. And then 2-player career mode being unresponsive in the menus, which is, if your menus ain't working, you can't play the career mode, that's kind of an issue. So yeah. And then of course right now we have resolved. Basically the patch just went out today. So that's where things are at. Anyway, let's get into the game and let's try the handling model. So we're going to test the handling in game. We are at Qatar, a track which should hopefully give us a bit of an idea. I did a lot of laps on this in the early versions of the game and kind of abusing the meta and seeing how the car drives. I'm going to run the default setup in this track, which is going to be increased downforce. All I'll change is probably brake bias. So let's get into it and let's see how it feels. Right, straight away, straight in. Already feeling a bit more of a relaxed front end. That's my straightaway impression after one corner. Let's do a bit more though and see what we're feeling. Ooh, okay. I mean, that could be setup related. So now if you turn the wheel, it doesn't have that kind of sharpness as bad as before. It still has that, but you can see if you just turn in like that, the car's not going to grip. So that's some progress. Right, are these flat still, or do we have to lift? This is flat. Oh, that's just about flat. And this one, still flat. So you can still carry speed. This one used to be flat. I doesn't feel like it is anymore. That was one where you would really abuse the car and the kind of rotation system. Although I think with the setup, it could be a different story. Okay, let's try and get a valid lap on the board and see what we're looking at pace-wise. Never mind. I feel like I want to test out a setup if there's one on the leaderboard, so we'll just finish this lap to get a reference. A 1:22.1. Let's crank up the wing and put a setup on. Now it seems we've got some custom setups here, so we'll go for Mr. Barry Bromond and get the setup on, and we'll see if that makes any difference. Let's quickly check to see what it is. So 50/48, maximum wing, a bit more like it. And then we've got all the diff engine settings. Right, let's see how this works. Okay, to be fair, there is a lot more grip initially. Okay, that sharpness is still there. You can really feel it on a setup. It's still there. It's really mellow on a default setup. It's really toned down, but when you put the wing on and you make a sharp, aggressive setup, the nose is still very sharp on that initial bite. Not as much as before, and once you kind of get through that first bite, it then kind of washes out and understeers, but you can see there just the initial bite, I cut that corner. What I want to test is the left-hander to see if we can still take that one flat. Let's see. Okay, so it's still flat then, as expected, with the setup. Let's try and get a valid lap on the board here. I can really feel that sharpness on the nose through that double right-hander. Car feels very delicate to drive. Feels a bit nicer in the low speed. Doesn't feel like, you know, that snappiness is there anymore when you kind of touch the curb and it wants to yank you and pull you around. It doesn't seem to be there anymore. We'll test that in another track in a minute. Right then, lap done. Let's see. This should be into the 20s, hopefully. Okay, 20.9. Right, so that gives us a baseline. Overall, that felt a bit better. I wouldn't say hugely different, but a bit better. With a default preset setup or something you and I might make, it feels okay. But when you put on those kind of high-level esports setups, it still has that kind of sharpness on the front end. Hairpin feels nice. Low speed, generally, but we'll test that now around another track. So obviously, the best option to go to is Spa, to test out the infamous bus stop chicane. We all saw how the cars would kind of spin and lose control in the low speed, so we are going to load on Mr. Thomas Ronhaar setup, and we're going to get straight on track and see how things feel. We know what it's like with the preset. I don't really have to drive it. I'm never going to really drive the presets on this game anyway, so this is more realistic for me to use kind of time trial setups and setups that are going to be on the limit. Anyway, let's get to it. So we're going to test everything straight away, starting off with the bus stop on the outlap. So 55 brake bias. Let's throw the car in, get lots of curb. Oh wow, okay, that was completely settled and stable. So, bit of wheel spin at the final corner. Let's see how turn 1 feels. Oh wow, look at that. Quite a lot of understeer. Before, the car would really sharpen up in the second part of the rotation phase. Also here, I'd keep this in 7th gear, but they've readjusted the gear ratios, so now this feels a much more natural 8th gear. Before I dropped to 7th, I actually keep it in 7th the whole way through. Let's see how the rest of the track feels. Les Coms. See there, it feels a bit sharp. Barely put any lock on the wheel and the car just goes in there as well. There's a lot of minimal rotation. The car's really on the nose. Possibly more than before in a weird sort of way. In the low speed it feels much better. All this feels pretty nice. Pretty intuitive. Pull on. See what I mean? That is very easy flat, and I put no lock in there whatsoever. Oh, this feels really floaty. Let's keep trying. So we'll just confirm the bus stop again. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Oh, you could accelerate on that curb before. You can't accelerate on that curb anymore. The back end gets loose. Let's try a clean lap, proper lap. But I'm a bit concerned about the medium to high speed. The sharpness almost feels a bit more to me. Okay, that's very different. Very different. This is where the car feels light to me. It just turns. I'm putting barely any lock on the wheel. I mean, especially this one here. I'm barely turning. That feels a lot nicer. Turn 8. Before, at turn 8, you get that kind of second part of the apex, almost like a hairpin where it tightens up. Yeah, Puon is easily flat. If you're running wide, just tighten up the lock and the car just makes the corner. Through here, it's kind of medium to high speed, so the car's right on the nose. It feels very, very, very light, almost like F122 in a way. Okay, accelerating on the curb like that seems fine, just don't run over too much. We'll try and get a valid lap here and then move on to the next experiment. Just want to try 7th gear. Okay, we didn't gain on the delta, which previously you would have, so that tells me the gear ratios have been fixed, so 8th gear is quicker. It just feels very on the nose. More than before. Right, valid lap done. Let's see. I'm going to be way off the pace. 41.7. Nearly 2 seconds off Ron Hart. But it gives us an idea. So, 2 tracks down. I want to test that kind of lower speed. So, we're going to go to Monaco. So, for this one, we'll go for Big Dunk. Duncan Hoffland. We'll get his setup on the car. Let's double check to see what that involves. So 50-50 wing, 100 engine braking. Okay, this looks pretty decent, so let's give it a shot. Also, yes, we have swapped cars. Why not? Let's try a few different cars and just make sure everything's working okay. Right then, Monaco. Let's see how this feels. So through here, you can really feel that nose and that sharpness working. Now it starts to wash out as you lose speed. Mirabeau. Definitely way more understeer in the low speed. Look at that, it takes so long for the front to grip through the hairpin. If you watched my career mode video the other day, the car would just grip up straight away on the front end. Let's see, Nouvelle chicane should be interesting. Bit of a bump there, not ideal. Yeah, it takes a lot longer to hook the car around that second part of the apex. Whereas here, the car's going to be quite on the nose. Just going to pop the brake bias up to 54 for a minute and see how the car reacts. Let's try again. That's pretty nice. Definitely more understeer, for sure. But then through here you can really throw the car in and basically let it grip and stay tight all the way through to the apex. A lot more understeer there as well. Car's struggling to get the nose to go in. Braking super late. Yep, you just need a bit more time to hook the car around and get through Nouvelle, for sure. There's way more grip through to back now though. Brushing the wall on the way through the swimming pool. Also doesn't like that curb as much anymore. Used to be able to fly with that curb before. I'll try and cut it some more next time around. So second lap, pretty drastic improvement. Let's go for one more. There we go. Now we're starting to get comfortable. Let's try and send it through swimming pool a bit more and cut that curb. We're absolutely cooking on this lap. Oh wow, okay, invalidated time for hitting the wall. It still doesn't feel nice riding over that curb at the second part of swimming pool. Overall, I think I actually don't mind the slower tracks, the lower speed. Feels pretty decent. Definitely way more understeer, like just getting through the slow corners takes longer. Traction to me seems about the same, not very different to be honest with you, but this is all in a time trial setting. Let's try one more track. So the other track which I want to try is Silverstone, because again I've done plenty of laps here, so I've got a decent understanding of what I was doing before compared to now, or what we should be doing now. So again, we'll load up, run a hard setup, and get straight on track and see what it's like. Now, I've heard you only brake in 3 spots around this track, which is a bit of a concern. So let's find out if that's true for me. Now, final chicane, by the way, is going to be a big test. I used to struggle through there massively, so at full speed, I want to see how it feels. All the bumpiness is still there. Turn 1 feels very, very on the nose. You can really feel the difference. It's more than before. But now through here, I think we're going to feel a bit more understeer, especially turn 4. Car definitely feels better though in lower speed. I prefer lower speed because the car doesn't hook before and it just kind of stays stable, which is nice. Also through here, car feels stable. Lost the back end, but normally what I mean is the back end would again hook round in the second part of the apex around Luffield. Old turn 1 is easy flat, just had to readjust there. Again, the sharpness is really catching me out. In these fast corners, it's really on the nose. This is what I mean, it's just super, super sharp. Okay, that's not too bad. Again, initial sharpness followed by understeer. Final chicane, this has felt pretty sketchy before. That feels much nicer, that feels very nice compared to the old handling model. Right, let's try a proper lap here. So we know about the nose sharpness, so we'll just kind of put minimal lock on the wheel. Through Abbey. Into turn 4. Just letting the car roll through with the engine braking. Now let's see if we can sort out Brooklands and Luffield. That's a lot better. Oh, traction though, non-existent. Got a bit too excited on the throttle there. Let's try and make this one smooth movement. There we go. I've got a test of that 7th or 8th gear now with the adjusted gear ratios. There we go, this time it's saying smooth through here, but I'm really putting in minimal wheel lock. There's literally nothing going in on the wheel. Let's try and get a clean lap in. Let's get Stowe sorted out. Little dab of the brake. Get the apex. That was pretty nice. And now the chicane. Bit deep on the first part. But you can just get the power down so much nicer on the exit now. Okay. That's not bad. Let's try one more. I just want to iron out this mistake at Luffield. Gonna try 3rd gear. That's a lot nicer. Invalidation, but still, that's a bit more like it. And that's a bit of lap time. We'll try 8th gear through here. Let's see how the Delta reacts. Okay, so it's probably still 7th. Unlike Eau Rouge at Spa, which is now 8th. Oh, a bit too much rotation there. Getting time though. Even though I feel like I was drifting the whole time. Let's try 4th instead of 3rd. Nope. Okay, so that's still the same. I'd say generally, from the laps I've done, if you kind of break it down to 3 points, or 4 points actually to be fair, braking feels the same, throttle acceleration feels the same. Generally we're talking, you know, microscopic differences, but generally the same thing. It feels better, more stable, more understeery and more planted in the low speed corners. However, I feel it feels even sharper and more reactive in the fast corners. So I'd say that's my initial assessment. So I want to know, again, my impressions are based off time trial setups, which are likely based off the previous handling model. So maybe setups need to be tweaked a little bit to accommodate for the new handling model, and it'll make things feel a bit more palatable, and the sharpness will kind of go away on the initial response time, but I fear it won't. I fear it's kind of, that's the way the cars drive. So I could be wrong. Watch this space and we'll see how things evolve, and you know, I'll keep you guys up to date with all the news, patches and things going on in the meantime. Now granted, I haven't done a race, I haven't tried, you know, the patch in that setting, and there's other adjustments in this patch besides handling, you know, focusing on the AI and their mistakes and certain other things which are definitely worth looking into. But that is something we'll test in our next career mode episode. Naturally, that's when we'll go to test out the patch and see how things stand, also the performance patch, how the cars have been rebalanced, and you know, where everything kind of stacks up. Either way, as for the handling, that's what the video is all about. Those are my thoughts, and I want to hear yours down below, guys. The patch is now out for everyone, so load it up, give it a go, and tell me what you think. But guys, like the video, subscribe for more. As always, check out the links down below, guys, to my channel sponsors and also affiliate codes and discounts down there as well. Also, check out the 2 videos on screen if you haven't seen them, and a big shout out to my channel members, as always, for supporting the channel and the content. That was it. That was the first big patch on F124. We'll see if there's more down the line. Either way, I want to hear your thoughts. Anyway, cheers for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Take care, and let's go back from